It's a bad creative choice, in my opinion. Okay. If nothing else, it's a bad, dumb, ego driven instead of creative driven. And often they're interlinked. But in this case, this is some bullshit. Why would you do this? It's just like, you need to make people look at this character and go, she's bad, I want to play her. That doesn't mean she needs to look like this at all.
This is the story of how the man who created God of War watched the newest God of War, rolled his eyes on camera, and wrote the whole thing off as a lost cause before anyone had touched a controller. God of War, Laufey arrived at Sony's June 2nd State of Play, and within hours the series creator David Jaffe had stared down 20 minutes of footage and started reaching for words like uninspired and dull. Today we're unpacking why his read lands, why this backlash has roots that go deeper than a noisy comment section, and why one sentence, the founder of the franchise saying this thing has no hook, is a problem Sony cannot meme its way out of. Some table setting first, because the surrounding context does a lot of the work here. The closing reveal of Sony's June 2nd, 2026 State of Play was God of War, Laufey, a PlayStation 5 game from Santa Monica Studio, the same team that steered the modern era of the franchise. By Sony's own framing, this counts as a swing for the fences, landing as the first mainline God of War since Ragnarok back in 2022. Which means fans had been waiting close to 4 years for it. Then came the detail that torched the internet before a single button got pressed, because for the first time in the entire history of the series, the star isn't Kratos. You step into the boots of Faye instead, the character also known as Laufey, Kratos' late wife and Atreus' mother. The story picks up after Faye is gone, the event first referenced in the opening of the 2018 game, dropping her into a place called the Everywhen, which Sony describes as an afterlife for the gods, a realm where deities from different mythologies claw at each other for power. Her combat runs faster and more aerial than what came before, built around a slender sword rather than the familiar axe, with magic and flashy effects layered on top. There's also a cube, and we are absolutely circling back to the cube, so hold that thought. Sony rolled out 20 full minutes of gameplay for this reveal, and 20 minutes is no teaser, it's a declaration. They wanted you to drink it all in and fall for it on the spot. And the man who invented God of War sat through every minute of that footage looking, in the words of one outlet, visibly distressed. David Jaffe is the name to know here. Back in 2005, he directed the original God of War on the PlayStation 2, then directed God of War 2, which makes him the reason Kratos exists, and the reason this entire conversation is even possible. These days, he streams and posts videos rather than building games, and his involvement with the series ended a long time ago. Yet when the founder of a franchise reacts to the newest entry in real time, the room goes quiet and people listen. On June 2nd, that reaction streamed live alongside the whole State of Play, and once the God of War, Laufey trailer rolled around the 1 hour 37 mark of his stream, the gloves came off. Let me walk you through it, because his breakdown is the spine of this whole thing. Watching it live, his gut response amounted to a baffled, "What is that?" and his cleaner sounding lines weren't even the harsh ones. The comparison he reached for should keep a Sony executive up at night, because he said the footage reminded him of Forspoken, and Forspoken is industry shorthand for an expensive, overhyped, hollow letdown. Within seconds, that's the bar he set. Not a polite, "this isn't for me," not a measured, "I have some concerns," but a straight line to one of the most launches in recent memory. Then arrived the verdict that everybody clipped. Calling the game uninspired and dull, he wrote it off as finished, and followed up by predicting the game won't do well for what Sony expects it to do. Read that prediction carefully, because he isn't claiming it stumbles in a vacuum. He's claiming it misses the towering expectations that ride on any mainline God of War, and that's a far sharper knife than a simple "I didn't like it." This next stretch is where Jaffe stops being an angry old creator and starts making a point worth 30 minutes of your time, the argument that separates this video from every reaction clip flooding your feed this week. The hook. Every great God of War game carried a hook, a clear and immediate reason to lean in, and that's the spine of Jaffe's whole case. The originals kept it about as simple as it gets, because the hook was Kratos being a badass, Greek mythology, and a tidal wave of gore and violence, so you understood instantly what you were getting and exactly why it ruled. Along came 2018, when Santa Monica did something genuinely brave by evolving the formula into new mythology, a son, and a slower, more grown-up story, and Jaffe has openly respected the craft of that game, because the reinvention itself became the hook, the jolt of watching this series mature. Ragnarok is where things wobbled in his telling, a game that felt like it was running out of gas, the reinvention no longer fresh, and the jolt long gone. Which lands us at Laufey, and Jaffe's challenge cuts clean to the bone, asking where exactly the hook is supposed to be this time. Look hard at what's actually being pitched to you, a character you only ever knew as a memory, an afterlife realm nobody had heard of, gods pulled from mythologies the series never touched, and a brand new combat style. Meanwhile, the connective tissue back to everything that hooked you, Kratos, the rage, the mythological weight, has quietly evaporated. Jaffe framed it plainly, saying that if you peeled the words God of War off the title and erased Kratos, what remained would just be a story about a fallen goddess, a fantasy game like any other. The uncomfortable truth in his point is that the only thing carrying this reveal, the only reason anyone is talking at all, is the brand name bolted to the front of it. A brand name isn't a hook, it's a promise, and his whole argument is that the promise and the product have stopped matching. He pushed it further, walking through the pieces he believes the series has shed over the years. Gone is the gore and the violence that powered the first game. Gone is the character, since he argues Kratos drifted so far after 2018 that the man stopped being Kratos, and now gone too is the identifiable mythology that gave the whole thing its face. His final straw came out as 5 words that stuck: "You lost me with the cube." So let's talk about the cube. One of Faye's companions inside the Everyone is a character called Frank, and Frankie happens to be a cosmic cube voiced by Jack Quaid, who's terrific and whom I'm not knocking for a second. The character itself is a floating cube with a personality, and there's a second companion named Rue, an enchanted ribbon voiced by Perlina Lau. Sit with that for a beat. A franchise that opened with one man dragging the gods of Olympus through a river of carnage now ships with a quippy magic cube and a sentient ribbon. Jaffe pinned it as the little Disney character at the beginning, and when the creator of your hyper-violent revenge saga watches the reveal, and the thing that finally breaks him is a friendly talking cube, the tonal whiplash has stopped being a nitpick. That whole identity crisis lives inside one floating polygon. Here comes the stretch where I'm supposed to play fair and hand you the other side. And I'm going to, because the defenders have real arguments and I would rather beat them than pretend they don't exist. Defense number 1 runs like this. Jaffe rips into everything. He's been swinging at this series since 2018. He branded Atreus a terrible character and griped that they made Kratos too soft. And he criticizes basically every game he didn't personally build. So why should his opinion matter? That happens to be the strongest shot against him, and parts of it ring true, since the man is a known critic of the modern direction, and this is far from his first swing at the franchise. Being a consistent critic doesn't make him wrong though. It makes him predictable, and those two things live in completely different houses. A broken clock is annoying, sure, yet a broken clock still tells the correct time twice a day. The specific charge here isn't I dislike soft Kratos as a matter of taste. It's a structural claim about why this product fails to connect with a wide audience, so you can wave off his palette all you want, but 92,000 dislikes are a harder thing to dismiss, and we're getting there. The hates everything defense soothes Jaffe's ego, and it does precisely nothing for the game. Defense number 2 is the clever one. People argue that it's only the opening, that of course it plays slow because games ease you into established character and setting, and that judging the entire experience off the first 20 minutes is unfair, pointing to plenty of titles that open quiet and finish brilliant. That's the sharpest tool the defenders own, and I'll even concede a point, because Jaffe himself admitted on stream that this was probably the opening, so credit where it's owed. The hole in it is that Sony chose this, since nobody marched into Santa Monica and forced them to build the entire reveal out of 20 minutes of the opening. They had the whole game to draw from and landed on these exact minutes. A reveal isn't an accident, it's a curated argument for why you should care. So if the best 20 minutes on offer is 20 minutes, that makes the franchise's own creator roll his eyes and mutter, "Forspoken," the issue stops being, "It gets better later," and becomes, "You fumbled the single most important first impression you will ever get." The opening defense excuses the game, and it never once excuses the choice to lead 2.5 million people with your weakest foot forward. Which carries us straight to the fans, because Jaffe is one loud voice and he is nowhere close to alone. The reveal trailer, as of this recording, sits around 2.5 million views against roughly 189,000 likes, and on its face, that reads healthy. The catch is that YouTube hides dislikes now, so you need a browser extension to surface them, and once you do, that same trailer has racked up north of 92,000 dislikes. Sit with that ratio for a moment. For one of the most beloved franchises in all of gaming, the very first look at the new game is getting buried alive, and that scale of pushback isn't a vocal minority. It's a chunk of the audience the size of a small country telling Sony no in the only language the platform still permits. Honesty matters here, so let me separate two backlashes that lazy videos love to blend into one. A loud slice of the reaction is pure culture war noise. People furious purely that Faye leads instead of Kratos, slinging the usual buzzwords and going after the character on grounds that have nothing to do with whether the game plays well. The part you need to clock, the part that makes Jaffe worth taking seriously, is that the day after, on June 3rd, he posted a clarification stating his criticism has zero to do with culture wars, that he holds zero issue with a woman starring in a God of War game or with a woman directing one, and he reportedly praised the people behind it. That clarification is exactly why his critique is the dangerous one. An angry crowd is easy to wave away, and you can write a tidy headline about sexist gamers and feel good about yourself afterward. What refuses to be waved away is the founder of the franchise, with the culture war material deliberately set off to the side, saying the game is creatively dull, that it carries no hook, and that it's headed for an underperformance. A craft criticism stacked on top of a business prediction, delivered by the one person alive who can say, "This is not God of War," and have it actually carry weight, because he's the man who defined what God of War meant in the first place. A few outlets painted his June 3rd follow-up as backpedaling, like he got spooked and went soft. My read runs the opposite direction because he tightened the argument instead of shrinking it, slicing away the slice of the backlash that would have let critics dismiss him and keeping the part that genuinely stings: the hook and the identity. The line where he admitted he'll probably only play it for the stream and that without that job he'd hold no interest at all. That last quote is the one I keep returning to. The creator of the franchise looking at the newest entry and confessing he'd have no reason to touch it if streaming weren't how he pays the bills. Picture building a sequel so disconnected from its own roots that the founder, the man whose name sits in the credits of the original, basically has to be paid by his audience before he'll care. Let me bring this home to where we started. God of War got built on a promise that you play as a furious, violent man tearing through mythology and always know exactly why it rules. And Jaffe's entire case is that the promise has leaked out of the series one piece at a time until what's left is a gorgeous, expensive, well-acted fantasy game wearing the God of War name like a costume. No Kratos, no Greek rage, no instantly legible hook, just a goddess, an afterlife, a cube, and a brand. The full game might prove him wrong. The everyone could turn out incredible. The opening could reveal itself as a trap. And we might all swallow our words by 2027 or whenever this thing finally launches, since Sony didn't even hand it a release date. Right now though, today the scoreboard reads grim, with the creator writing it off, the trailer drowning in dislikes, and the strongest defense on the table amounting to wait for the rest of it. That is not where a mainline God of War wants to sit after its grand debut. When the man who built the house tells you the new room doesn't belong, agreeing with him is optional, but ignoring the fact that he's the only one willing to say it out loud would make you a fool. Go pull up the dislike count yourself, then come back and try to tell me Jaffe got this one wrong.